Hey guys, welcome to week 6. So today we are going to be talking about genre conventions. This is mentioned in your A2 requirements sheet. So we're going to go a little bit over what it's going to look like to write a proposal. As we mentioned last week, this is a kind of assignment that you're probably not going to be as familiar with as you are with, say, a research argument or something like that. So we're going to talk about what that's going to look like, and then we're going to talk about the exciting world of citations. So all of the rules concerning citations and places where you can find these sort of guidelines. Now, keep in mind that I am not a dictionary with every single rule on citation stored in my memory. I don't expect you to be one either. I just expect you to be able to look these things up so that you can follow the directions, because they're guidelines that are constantly changing. So with that being said, let's get right into it. So one of the criteria on your A2 requirements sheet is development for audience. Now, what does that look like in a proposal? And in addition to evidence, what else is needed in order to have a well-developed proposal? And what are 3 components of the proposal that you need to fully develop for A2? So evidence is actually the first step to supporting the problem that you've identified in your paper. The exigency, which we talked about last week, means the urgency of this problem and the solution. And one thing that I do want to clear up is that you do have to identify a problem that is currently a problem. It can't be something that's already been solved. One really good example of this is the Michigan water crisis. Don't write about that because it's something that has already been solved. Anyways, so developing the evidence through explaining it and connecting it to your audience is the next crucial element of A2. So when you say something like, 90% of people said that they wanted tuition lowered, I want you to not just drop in that statistic and that piece of evidence, but to explain what that means to your stakeholder, to your audience. So how does this affect them? Why is this something that's important for them to know? So make sure that's what you're doing. That's what we call development for audience. So another thing that we want to talk about is pivotal words that are used to aid in developing things for audience. So these are things that extend your evidence or statistics or stories. It introduces the evidence, and it either offers an explanation, a discussion about that, a commentary on it, or analysis. So you're not just dropping in a piece of evidence, you are going further than that and making meaning out of it for your audience using any of these 4 bullets. So let's talk about the rhetorical situation of A2. We always want to bring things back to that rhetorical situation. We talked about it a little bit last week. We mentioned we have the author, which in this case is you, and then your audience. So that is going to be whatever specific stakeholder you have chosen who can take action on your problem and is affected by it, so has a stake in the issue. And at the center of all of this is the purpose of your paper. So whether the purpose is to lower the cost of tuition or to get people to recycle, whatever it is, that is what's going to drive your whole paper. So you want to analyze the problem and propose a solution. And then the context is whatever you've chosen to talk about. So if it's global warming, whatever it is you've chosen. And then the genre of the text is a proposal. So today we're going to be going over what the genre conventions of that proposal looks like so that you guys can make sure that your papers look like a proposal should look. And then one more thing we're going to be talking about are ethos. So we talked about the 3, different appeals that you can make to your audience: ethos, pathos, and logos. And today we're really going to be owning in on the ethos, which is the the credibility, how you establish that you are a credible author, your reader can trust you, through the evidence that we cite to support our points. We also the logos are found in how well your proposal meets the specifications of a proposal and the genre conventions of it. And then your pathos are all specific to your stakeholders. So, you know that it's your stakeholders' beliefs, values, and emotions about whatever it is that you've chosen to write about. So these are all factors that we want to keep in mind as we're working on this assignment. So let's talk about genre expectations. You are going to, in this week's discussion post, you'll be split up into different groups, and depending on which proposal you've been assigned to look at in your group, you'll take a look at one of these 4 proposals, and then you're going to write about it. You're going to analyze that proposal, answering the following questions about it. So, what is the purpose and focus of the proposal? How does the author organize the proposal based on that purpose and focus? And why do you think that the author has chosen to organize the proposal in the way that he or she has? So consider the way that the purpose and focus and the organization are going together. And then given what you've learned about from these various proposals that you've just looked at and how well they were organized, how will you then organize your own proposal? You get to choose what headings and subheadings you want to have, whether you want to use bullet points or not. So how will you order this information, and what components will you include in your own proposal? So I also want you to make an outline and list the headings that you'll include in your proposal in the order that they'll most likely go in. And remember that you should keep your specific audience in mind when you consider these questions. So let's talk about citations. You guys read about this for homework. So a little bit of review. I want you to take this quiz and answer it to the best of your ability. We are going to go over some of these questions in this class lecture. So make sure you listen to the lecture first and then go to Canvas and take the quiz, and that'll ask you all of these questions. But let's take a look at a sample Works Cited page. So we notice that the title is centered and it's always called Works Cited. Some other areas use references or sources. Here in composition, we call it Works Cited. We also use a hanging indent to indicate when we're using a new source. So this is how we separate our sources. We don't number them, we don't use bullet points, we just use this hanging indent. And everything is alphabetized and double spaced. So I want you to notice that we start with the A's and work our way all the way down the alphabet. Every single thing is double spaced like the rest of your paper will be. And then I also want to bring your attention to 2 ways to do an in-text citation. So we can either do it parenthetically, which is where the parentheses are after the information. And an example of this is shown here. We have the author's last name and then the page number, and that's all in parentheses, and the period goes outside of the parentheses. So then we also have the option of doing narrative citations. So an example of that is you'd be using the author's name in the sentence, and you have the quote that the author uses, and then you just put the page number in parentheses at the end, followed by a period. So both of these indicate to your reader that this quote came from the source by Retman, and I can go to the Works Cited page at the end and find the full citation for Retman and access this source if I was curious about it and wanted to learn more. So that's pretty much the whole basis of this assignment. So here are some more examples. Notice how the author's last name juts out here and everything else is indented in. This is called a hanging indent, and we just viewed this on the other page as well. But this lays out the way that a citation should be set up for an anthology or a collection like our Healthy State Reader. And please ignore that this says Food Reader. It should say Healthy State Reader. So it'll start with the article author and first and last name, and then article title and quotation marks with a period. You'd put the name of the anthology or the edited collection, and then the edited by and the full name of editors, the publisher, the year the book was published, page numbers of article with PP preceding them if there's multiple pages, or if you're only referencing one page, you can just use a single P. So here's an example of that. They filled out all of these things that are listed up here. I also want you to notice that important words in article titles and book titles are capitalized, and book titles are italicized. So awesome article about stuff and things, all of those letters are capitalized there, and then this is italicized. So let's take a look at how you would cite from a website. So this lists everything that you'll need to include: the author's last name, first name, the title of the website publisher, the publication date of that article, the URL, and then whatever date you accessed this. And then on the bottom here, we have an example of what that looks like. So again, notice that the author's name juts out and everything else is indented in, using that hanging indent again. And notice that we're still putting quotation marks around the title and italicizing the website title. So I want you guys to do a little bit of practice on your own. So get out your Healthy State Reader and turn to one of the articles that you're using for A2 or a source from one of the websites that you're using for A2. And I want you to use your notes from today and a video that I'll have up on Canvas and the section on your In Conversation textbook on MLA citation as resources for doing this. And I want you to write out the full citation as it would appear in the works cited of your A2, and then find a sentence or passage that you might use and write it out with both an in-text citation where you cite things parenthetically, and also an in-text citation where you cite narratively. So just to jog your memory a little bit, the parenthetical citations are where you have the author's last name and page number in the parentheses at the very end. And the narrative citations is where you mention the author's name in the sentence and then put the page number in parentheses at the end. So a few things to remember, just general rules about MLA and citations. If it's coming from the Few Reader, then it must be cited as an anthology. So you can't just turn to the back of the references page. You need to actually cite this anthology book, because the references page is going to show you where this article originally came from. So you need to cite the anthology book. Also, capitalization, punctuation, all of these things matter, especially when it comes to works cited pages. So make sure that you're doing that correctly. Make sure that whatever needs to be italicized is italicized, whatever needs parentheses is in parentheses. And also, URLs are now included in MLA format for full citations. So make sure that you're including that. And if there is no author, then I want you to start with the next item over. A lot of the times, websites won't have authors, so it's usually the title that you'd start with in that case. Also, if there's a page number, then it needs to be included in the in-text citation. We're using MLA for A2, so not APA, not any other style of citations. So make sure that you are following the proper guidelines. For homework, I want you guys to create an outline for yourself based on the work that we did today in class. So consider where you'll need to integrate sources. Remember that you need to develop with evidence your description of the problem, the exigency or the urgency of the situation for your audience, and the solution. So identify 5 to 6 quotes or paraphrases of evidence that you could potentially use in your proposal and add them in the appropriate place in your outline, and then upload this to Canvas by Wednesday, so this Wednesday, September 30th at 11:59, and review your notes from class, identify any questions you have about this, and reread the requirements for A2, make sure that you're clear on everything, and then also take a look at the student example posted on Canvas.